all, thank you. Are you all recording this?
We are.
Okay. All right. So, what I wanted to do was talk to you a little bit today about being intentional and self-directed in terms of you and your own leadership. And what I wanted to do is, since we don't have much time, is go through a brief presentation, and then what I provided to you is a series of assessments. So, one of the things I'm a big believer of assessment tools because I believe self-awareness is a superpower. We have a lot of dynamics that are happening in leadership now in government where people are not self-aware, and because they're not self-aware, they're engaging in activities that I think are not the most beneficial to the stakeholders that they're serving. And so for me, one of the things I always believe that leadership development kind of begins with a level of self-assessment, and that self-assessment is a little different than what most people think about when they think about self-assessment. A lot of people think about self-assessment is I'm not doing things well, so let's really focus on identifying that. But what I want you to start to think about today is leadership development as a way of identifying your strengths and finding ways to leverage those strengths in the confines of your job or in other opportunities that will present themselves to you in the future. And so with that being said, let me see if I can share. I have some slides. How do I have a PowerPoint. Let me see.
At the top right
Oh,
hand
there it
side.
is.
Yeah.
All right, can you see it?
Yes.
All right. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about the current landscape, right? In terms of where you are and in terms of certain dynamics as it relates to professional development. So according to Washington Post, right, they talk about the increasing importance of a graduate degree, right? And jobs that require a master's degree grew up 21.7%. So according to Washington Post, a master's degree surge in the nation from 2000 to 2012, master's degrees have jumped 63%. And so Georgetown, for example, right, awards now more master's degrees than bachelor's degrees, right? George Washington, which ranked 18th in the nation, right, awards over 4,000 master's degrees. John Hopkins awards over 5,000. And some of you all there in California, where University of Phoenix has a big presence, University of Phoenix ranked first, awards 18,000 master's degrees. So what does this all mean to you? What this means to me is that, right, credentials matter, but what it also means is a master's degree is becoming what a bachelor's degree was 30 years ago. What it also means is that the work landscape is competitive out there, right? And you need to figure out what your edges are, what your strength is to allow yourself to not only maintain your current opportunity, but be competitive for new opportunities as they evolve and present themselves. And really what this means is a need to retool, a need to be self-directed. And so one of the things I like to share about retooling and being self-directed is what opportunities are you pursuing to retool yourself and be self-directed? Now, some things don't cost money, you can do on your own. Obviously, graduate school is not a cheap endeavor. It's a challenge for you to decide financially if you want to make that. And if you're someone like me, where you're on the line between should I go to school or are my kids going to school, those are represent some challenge. But what I want to share is a little nugget. So there's an organization called the Lincoln Institute on Land Policy, and I encourage many of you all to Google that when this meeting is done. The Lincoln Institute on Land Policy is a fellowship organization tied to Claremont Lincoln University. And Claremont Lincoln University is a school that I finished a master's degree from. The Lincoln Institute on Land Policy is really concerned that we're not developing public policy professionals that have the unique and needed skills that we need right now to function in government. So what they've done is they've collaborated with Claremont Lincoln University to fund scholarship and grants to allow people that want to go get a master's degree, where you can get a master's degree from a legitimate brick and mortar nonprofit accredited school for about $9,000. And for those people on this call that don't have a bachelor's degree, they are fully funding one bachelor completion program in policy right now. So it's a new program. They're launching it. So people that get in, they're fully funding them. So if you went to college and never completed your degree, here's an opportunity for you to go and use a scholarship program and fully complete your degree. And for those of y'all never got a master's degree, I think it's pretty cool that you can get a master's degree for less than $10,000. So what I talk about is, what is your personal leadership brand, right? So I always say your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room, right? Or I always say when people work someplace, they have two files. They have what I call your personnel file, like what is your title, what is your job, but I also talk about your hall file, is what do people say about you in the hallway when you're not there. So I always say when you're developing your own leadership perspective, to think about yourself as a product, right? And when you think about the strongest brands that are out there in the marketplace, they're powerful, they're authentic, they're consistent, they're viable. They're visible, they're valuable. The same qualities apply to you as how you develop yourself as a leader. So I always say why your personal leadership brand is important. We now have greater control over our own destiny, right? So, historically we thought, well, the only time we can get leadership training is if my boss approves for me to go to this leadership program. But what I'm saying is we need to manage our own impressions and we need to be self-directed. Now, some of that self-directed might be, I'm going to read a book on my own, I'm going to do a workshop on my own, or I'm going to use some assessments and identify my various strengths and try to find opportunities in the workplace, as many as possible, for me to leverage those strengths. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So I always tell people, what is your current brand? What is your identity? What are your attributes? What's your vision? What are your values, right? Do you elicit trust with your coworkers? I remember when I worked in the federal government, I worked for the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission for 8 years. We used to have an employee, and I'm going to date myself, but for some of you all that realize, an old show used to be called Gilligan's Island. And what was funny was there was one person that was in a leadership role, and they referred to her as Gilligan. And if you've never seen the show on Gilligan's Island, every time they have a chance, they're stranded on an island. Every time they have a chance to get off the island, Gilligan does something that messes their chances up. So this person had a reputation that they were not reliable, that you couldn't trust them to deal with serious, significant projects because they would find some way to mess it up. So always think of people like, what is your brand? Are you reliable? Are you the expert? Are you the go-to person? Or do you just come to work and just, check the clock every day, do your 8 hours and leave in a very obscure way? So ask yourself, what makes you special as a leader? What are your greatest strengths? What differentiates you from others? How does your uniqueness translate into value, right? What are your most significant accomplishments? What do people come to you for? Now, when I mention what do people come to you for, they shouldn't come to you just because you're the person that processes reimbursements or you're the person that oversees procurement. What do they come to you for is your level of expertise, right? What do you want to be known for, right? What do you want others to think about when they hear your name? So I always say, is a perception of others consistent with the perception of yourself? So we have a lot of people that function out here to be like, oh, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great. But most people don't see them as great. And so I always say, use assessment tools, seek feedback from those that you trust. So there's a concept in psychology called the Johari window. Johari window is a blind spot that people can't see. So it'd be like if I turned around and there was a bald spot in the back of my head that I never paid attention to or saw, where every time I turn around, you all can see it, but I can't see it. So Johari window is, again, how do you figure out what your blind spots are and find ways to navigate around that? And let's talk about how do you strengthen your brand, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the workshop. So one of the things when I talk about being self-directed and developing yourself as a leader is what is your goal? So one of the things I'm going to challenge you, and we had some documents that I shared earlier in the day. We're not going to do them all today, but there's a document for you to kind of develop a leadership development plan for yourself. We'll try to get through the assessments today, and then I'll give some time to answer questions. But the leadership development plan is a tool, and it's kind of built off of my dissertation research when I was at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, where I was very concerned that the performance evaluation really did not help in developing you as a leader. One of my research really shared is one of the weaknesses of the performance evaluation was it looked backwards, it didn't look forward, and it didn't identify opportunities for you to grow. It just basically said, oh, well, Darrell, you're weak at this, so for the next 12 months, I'm going to put you in training related to that. And what tended to happen is in the performance evaluation, people don't really have conversations with you about what are your strengths, what is it that you do very, very well, and how can we find opportunities to leverage those strengths. And that's when I talk about strength-based leadership development, and the assessments and the leadership development plan documents are things where I want all of you all on your own later after this is done to identify some of your strengths and try to create ways to leverage those strengths that showcase your talents where you are and help to build those strengths for those of you all that are looking to make a move to another organization. And part of that process is determining when it comes to leadership development, what is your goal, right? Who do you want to target? Where do you want to position yourself? Where do you need to make changes? And what is your why? Let's be realistic. A lot of us don't work in government because we want to be rich. We're not hedge fund bros, right? We're interested because we really care about stakeholders and communities and things that are important to us. So I think a lot of times developing yourself around those strengths. What drew you to government? Why are you in government? What difference do you want to make in government? Are things that allow you to create kind of a personal leadership mission statement or create an elevator speech, right? I always feel like when I talk to my graduate and doctoral students, like, what's your elevator speech, right? If the government organization or agency, the director or head of that was in the elevator with you and you're riding up to the 17th floor, like, and they said, tell me about yourself, what would you tell them about you? That is a little bit of your background or your speech, but really identifies what your strengths are or what your unique talents and abilities are. So I always say, make relevant adjustments, fill gaps, experience. So I always talk about this concept called role modeling. And role modeling is you identify someone who's at a level that you're not at, and then you look at them and you say, what do they have that I don't have? Like I always say, if you're not on LinkedIn, you should. LinkedIn has helped me a lot in my career because I've been able to see people's profiles and see things on their profile and Google them. Oh, they're part of this organization, or they did this fellowship, or, oh, I see they have a master's degree, I don't have one, or I see that they did this experience, I didn't do it. And so one of the things that you want to do when you identify a place you want to go, you're not going to get there magically. You're going to have to direct yourself. I always explain to people, yes, we don't have abundance of resources, but we also have to adjust our direction of where we're going. And so my challenge to a lot of you all is you have experience, you're in a job role, but I'm challenging you to not assume that your boss or your organization is going to take control over your leadership career for you to take control of it on your own. And essentially what that means is for you, instead of you being in a boat, being upset where the current's taking you, what I'm challenging you to do today is to take steps to direct the boat and guide the direction of where you're going to go, right? So I talk about showcase your band, building influential relationships. So one of the things I talk about when it relates to leadership development is I think you need to build influential relationships, peers, as well as people above you. Now, I always tell people, right, an influential relation, most people think an influential relationship is someone who's at a senior level that can hook me up with something. No, I'm talking about influential relationships that you can mentor, that you can leverage each other. These are influential people, could be at similar levels to you are, So with that job opportunity presents itself, they're going to look out for you. Hey, we have this opportunity where we're at. I instantly thought about you. Here, take a look at this. They'll be searching for opportunities for you without you telling them, hey, look for opportunities for me. Or what they'll be able to do is when you have that dream job that you're looking for and you've gotten to that second stage of the interview, it's cool to be able to identify 5 people that can write unsolicited letters of recommendation on your behalf to that decision maker, right? And if they work in government roles like you, that's a pretty powerful thing. Getting involved in cross-functional projects, use volunteer to strengthen and develop your skills, or take a leadership role in your organization. So some of you all are not in a supervisory leadership role, but there may be some community organization where you can do that, where you can get some leadership experience on your resume. Or some of you all have strengths in a certain area where you can volunteer and contact your supervision in your organization and say, listen, I'd like to lead this project. I'd like to work on this activity. So Harvey Coleman has a book called Empowering Yourself. It's a very simple read, but he outlines PI as a formula for success. And PI stands for performance, image, exposure. Now, I would like to do a little exercise for you to think for yourself. So of all these, right, if we equal 100%, right, which one, just think on your own, like how much of a percentage out of 100 is P and how much is I and how much is E? So if it's 100%, do you think performance is 80%, right, 90%, 95%, 98%, and the other ones are 1%? Just think amongst yourself, because he has this in a book. And Harvey Coleman was Fortune 500 executive. He interviewed some other executives in Fortune 500 companies. So here's what he said, because we all thought if you work hard, right, we'll get recognized because we work hard. He said performance is only 10%. He said image is 30%, exposure is 60%. The key to exposure is being effective when you have exposure. So exposure is you're on a visible project that other senior leaders in your organization see, and you perform very, very well. And the way he talks about gaining exposure is finding projects that leverage your strengths. So what he said is people work hard all the time in an environment and no one knows about it. Like some of you all are on this call right now, right? No one knows how great of a job you is because there's no problems, right? Right? They only realize that how great of a job you is till you leave that job and someone comes in who doesn't perform as well as you. So all of us are taught, well, if you work hard, people will just recognize you, and that's all you need to do is work hard. Well, part of that is that image, right? Do people view you as a leader? And part of that exposure. Are you exposed to the right people that can really see your talents and skills? So always talk about proactive. What are you accomplishing? So one of the things I believe all throughout the year is that you should have a separate Word document on the side where you're thinking about the projects you do and you're keeping it throughout the year. Because how many times you get to your evaluation and you need to think about, what did I do throughout the year? What I do to recognize myself? And so I always talk about maximize your participation in meetings and groups, communicate effectively, stay relevant. This is the part of the read tool. So even though you might be saying, oh, I'm not going to get a graduate degree, but what are you doing self-directed learning? Are you reading? Are you doing a workshop? Are you looking at a podcast? Are you looking at things on YouTube? This is an age where you really have to be self-directed and you have to be relevant, especially since more and more are being challenged by technology and people are trying to think, how can we infringe and use AI to do more of the work that people do? Your goal is to really stay relevant, right? And really stay valuable. There's a really good book called Linchpin, Are You Indispensable? And the book Linchpin, Are You Indispensable? Really talks about your need to make yourself, position yourself as a problem solver, as an expert in your organization. And it talks about that really being the only job security moving forward. That you're an expert, you're very knowledgeable in a specific field that, you know, people might know your sauce, what your secret sauce is, but they don't know how to make it. And that's really what the book talks about. So be strategic. Choose your associates wisely, right? You want to choose people that have a positive attitude. One of the things that I don't try to lecture people is I also think you need to manage your brand on social media. Now, obviously, there's some weird dynamics, right? Like social media is private, social media is this. But I always believe like there are some things that you say on social media and you work in a government organization that can get you fired, right? I hate to say that, but one of my best friends and the people you hang around on social media, right, who your associates are, can be problematic too. Like I'm only on LinkedIn, I'm not on Facebook, but I know a lot of people on Facebook, Instagram, because they connect with family and friends, but you have to be very, very careful. I worked at a government agency one time where we had a candidate and they were interviewing them, and we went to do the panel interview. One of the people in the panel interview printed out a screenshot of a person's associates on social media, and they were all smoking marijuana. And the person said, "Can you explain this?" And the person was dumbfounded with how to explain it because these were this person's associates. He was standing next to them. Wasn't smoking marijuana, but they were all smoking marijuana. They posted on social media. So I always tell that. So one of the things my dad used to always say too is dress and act the part. My dad used to always say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And so incidentally, since high school, I wore a shirt and tie to high school. So one of the things that people start to talk about is, and I know like your clothes don't really tell whether you're competent or not, but the real conversation now for a lot of organization is executive presence. Do you show yourself as a leader? Do you dress as a leader? Do people see you in a professional image like, oh, I can see that person leading my department and leading my organization? I talk about don't just check the box and get the graduate degree. So some people have graduate degrees, but they just check the box. They just think, oh, I have a graduate degree. Now people are going to come to my house like Publishers Clearinghouse, Prize Patrol, and select me. No, you have to do more than that. When you're in the program, you have to develop these relationships and maintain them. And some of you all have graduate degrees, but you're not leveraging the services where you went to school. If you're trying to transition to another job, go back and pound on that career center director to say, listen, I'm looking for a new job. What services do you have to help me get a new job? What networking opportunities? Who can you link me up in government that graduated from this school where I can leverage that I'm an alumni like they're an alumni? And I always believe, even if you're happy in your job, you should always have an updated resume. I believe you should always have multiple mentors, a mentor in your department, and then some mentors out of your department. A lot of people don't have mentors. They have mentees. They don't have mentors. I think mentors are important. And I also think that you should look to have artifacts that demonstrate your expertise, right? So what project can you hang on your head that you can go to someone and say, this was my project, this was something that I did, or this was a project that I led? So I talked about empowering yourself as a book. There's another book called Reinventing You. These are resources that I think could be helpful in self-directed. So even though you might not do a master's degree, I believe you should be reading. I believe you should be listening to podcasts on leadership, or you should be looking at YouTube and doing other things, right? To help keep yourself sharp, keep yourself viable. So do we have any questions before we move to the assessments?
Any questions? You can drop them in the chat if you want.
All right. Let me grab the assessments and we can go through those.
The assessments are also in the chat.
They are?
Yes. Grace dropped them in there if you need to access them.
All right. So what I want everyone to do is to go in the chat and look at the True Colors assessment. pull up the True Colors assessment in the chat. I'll wait for it to come up. Okay, so all right, so here's what I want you to do. So on row 1, right, A through D, pick 1 through 4, which one is most likely. So the one that's most likely, you put a 4 in the box. Second most, you put a 3. Second most, you put a 2. Least, you put a 1. You can only use the numbers once. So shouldn't be any more than 1 4, 1 3, 1 2, 1 1 across the line. So A says active, variety, sports, opportunity, spontaneous, flexible. If that's you, put a 4. If that's really not you, put a 1 and score them from, again, most to least across. Do them all the way down from row 1 all the way down to the bottom. So when you get done, what you need to do is tally up the total scores, adding them together of the letters that you have here. So for the first one, you need to take, what did you put for A? What did you put for H? What did you put for K? What did you put for N? What did you put for S? Add them all together and put the score there. And then the second one is, what did you put for D? What did you put for E? What did you put for L? What did you put for Q in the box? And add them all together and put your score there. And then the same for the other ones across. So once you get them done, put the total scores together. So we'll give people like 2 more minutes. Okay, so your highest score is your most dominant preference. Your second is your second dominant. So your total blue score, green score, gold score, orange score. So for anyone who's curious, I'm a blue, but my green's very close. So this will tell you some aspects about greens and oranges and blues and golds. Again, the premise is not to put you in a box. The premise is for you to understand what your preferences and strengths are, and hopefully to develop your career or your opportunities or yourself as a leader based on your interests and strengths and preferences. Any thoughts on that?
I'm a little enlightened.
All right, let's pull up. So you'll laugh. Let me see. I think I did this for a group of military. They were all orange and golds, like overwhelmingly, like 90% of them were orange and golds, which was interesting to me. But 90% of them were orange and golds. Orange and golds, when I've done this, mostly in government, tend to be the lowest amount that I tend to find. I find a lot of people that are blues and greens, but that doesn't matter. I always feel like the strength is the diversity of people in a group. And I don't think one's better than others. Because a lot of times you'll do things like take Myers Briggs or whatever, and they'll try to put you in a box. Oh, you're a ENTJ, and that means something. No, this just says these are your preferences. And based on your preferences, remember, I believe self awareness is a superpower. So if you know what your preferences are, then you know how to create environments and dynamics where you can leverage your preferences.
Dr. B, we
Dr.
have one
B,
question. Oh,
oh no,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
ahead.
Go
Go
ahead, Ann. Oh, I was just there's a question on the chats that says, would these key words be in line with your hallway brand?
No, because you manage your hallway brand, right? Because these are just your preferences. You know, your hallway brand is really a dynamic of what you manage. Now, some people might perceive these things with you, and it plays a portion of it, right? But part of your hallway brand is perception. And we all know perception is not always reality, right? So it's how you perceive. Your hallway brand could be driven by how you perceive, which again, perception is not always reality. But if people perceive these tendencies in you, it could go into their assessment of what your hall file is or your hallway brand is.
Dr. B, would you say that, like, looking at the results of your colors, you kind of want to recognize what your strong attributes are and maybe build your leadership off of those, but is there
Yeah.
any expectation to also look at what you're not and try to build those in as well? Is it kind of like a healthy balance of both of
Well, you
those?
kind of do a healthy balance, but there's tons of research out there that says you can only move the needle slightly on your weaknesses, but you can almost move the needle exponentially on your strengths. So what I'm not advocating for is, oh, you don't work on the things you're not good at. If you know you're not good at it, you work at it and you become better at it, where it's not a liability. It's really the way they say you work on your weaknesses, is that they're not, don't make them liabilities to you. But they really say you're actually good. It's a strength for a weakness. It's a strength for a reason. And because it's a strength, they always say that you get your energy and your life-giving forces doing the things that you do well or you like or you're interested in. And they say a lot of people are miserable on their job because they don't have enough of the things they love to do or enough activities in their job that leverage their strengths. So I'm not saying don't work on your weaknesses. You should always work on your weaknesses so they're not a liability. But the problem that most people have is they'll spend 80 or 90% of the development time working on their weakness. And as an end result, it's a weakness for a reason, right? You can only improve a little bit. You're not good at it. There's some dynamic that doesn't make you good. Now, you can be better so it's not a liability. But people say once you reach a certain stage, you'll get way more, you'll be way more productive trying to find ways to leverage your strengths than spending all your time trying to make your weaknesses equal to your strengths. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
All right, so let's go in the chat and grab the conflict management style assessment. And I pulled it up. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, so what is this is a series of questions. You need to circle the one that is most, only circle one that is most like you. So it says, I discuss ideas with others and try to find solutions that meet everyone's needs. If that's rarely what you do, put a circle. If that's always what you do, put a 4. If it's sometimes, put a 2. And this is not at home, this is at work. Because some people's conflict management styles are different at home than they are at work. So go through those questions 1 through 15 and answer those. Okay. So what you want to do is put the answers at the bottom for questions 1, 5, and 7. Add them up, right? 4, 9, and 12, add them up. 6, 10, and 15, add them up. 3, 11, and 14, add them up. 2, 8, and 13, add them up. So for this one, your lowest score indicates your preferred strategy on how you manage conflict. I'm sorry, your highest score is your preferred. Sorry. Your lowest is your least preferred. I always get this confused with another one I've used before. So total them all, the whatever score you put for each, add them up and put them in the box, add them up, put them in the box. So these actually have they use animals to align with the conflict management style. So collaborating, competing, avoiding, accommodating, compromising. So the owl, collaborative owl, avoiding turtle, competing shark, accommodating teddy bear, compromising fox. And the fun thing about this, I've done these before in workshops. You all have them, but I always get people like, oh, I want to take this home and do this on a significant other. I want to do this on my kids. So a lot of these things, you have copies of them. You can do them. They're sometimes fun to do. Does anyone have any comments or questions around that? All right. So let's get to. All right. All right. So grab the leadership style quiz. For each question, complete a statement by choosing one of the 3 options, right? It's normally how you would act, right? Not how you should act, normally how you would act. So number 1 says, there's a serious conflict within my team. What do? A, remind everyone that we have goals. B, I bring people together so we can talk about it. Or C, I let them work it out on themselves. So check the box, A, B, or C. That's the answer to these questions. That's normally how you behave. Remember, these whole things are built on your own honesty, not what you think you should do. Remember, self-awareness is a skill. Don't say what you think you should put. Just be honest with yourself, because this doesn't go to anyone but you. So we do these things on our own. But I've done leadership development programs in the federal government where we start the leadership development program with assessments. And then people will go through these assessments with an executive coach. And then they'll work with that coach to kind of build their own leadership development plan that they're going to do throughout the program. And so one of the things that I've done with giving you these assessments is allowed you to develop these things on your own and then work self-directedly on your own to set goals on how you want to develop your leadership skills in the next 3, 6, 12, 24 months. So when you get to the bottom, you want to put your numbers by the A, by the B, by the C, and then it gives you instructions. A, you times 1. B, you times 2. C, you times 3. Whatever your total score number is for that, times it times 1 if it's an A, times it by 2 if it's a B, times it by 3 if it's a C. So then at the bottom, we have the score interpretation. So you're going to add them all up together, top to bottom, and you'll get a score, total amount of score. So you'll add all your A's, B's, and C's after you times them, times the amount, and you'll get a total score. So 12 to 20, you're an authoritarian, autocratic leadership. 20 to 27, you're democratic, participating style leadership. 28 to 36, you're delegating laissez-faire type of leader. So underneath it explains the different dynamics of each. Do we have any questions or thoughts on that? I mean, my hope is that these things are beneficial to kind of help you, right? And give you food for thought to think about. All right, so the next thing that I have, the next document in chat is your own personal leadership development plan. So this is based off of my dissertation work, where I did strength-based leadership development, where now you have the assessment tools now on your own. This is self-directed, you do on your own. There's a series of questions that you will ask, and that for you will identify things that you've done very, very well, projects you worked on. And these are all focused on identifying your strengths. And what you do is you marry these up with the assessments. And I've given you some things to fill out, some it's almost like a worksheet later on where you start to set some goals for yourself and you start to develop yourself, um, and think about your own leadership development plan. So there's a series of questions that are self-reflected, right? Where you're asking, think of a project where you performed at your best. What actually did you do that contributed to that success? You know, what task or responsibilities other rely on from you? What part of that work made you feel natural and energizing to you? So these are kind of questions that you can also use to guide when you're doing your narrative in your performance evaluation. Don't just say I led this project, but you can use these questions to guide your own narrative as you fill out your performance evaluation. Because a lot of times we don't really advocate for ourselves when it's time to advocate, but these are questions that help you really reflect on what did I do that was instrumental in that project, and why does it matter, and why do I deserve to be promoted? Why do I deserve a raise? These are also points of pride that if you're interviewing with other organizations, you can talk about, right? These are my strengths. Here's what I do well, right? A lot of times, if you're going on an interview and you've never really assessed what you've done well, you're just thinking they can automatically assume it because they see on my resume that I've been a city manager for 5 years, or I've been a procurement director for 10 years, or I've been a purchasing manager here. They should know I'm good at it. No, these are things where you're not being egotistical, you're being honest. These are some things that I bring to the table that I can leverage that are really, really important, or that I can bring to your organization, or that I can bring to the next role, or I can bring to the team. So you'll go through them. There's all kind of series of questions there. There's some guidance there I put together for you. This is your own document to use as you see fit, because I wanted to give you some tools, because a lot of times we'll go in a workshop thing. A lot of times you'll go to a workshop or you'll hear a lecture, and then the lecture will be fine in the moment, but there's really nothing that you can really take away and act on, where this is actually guidance that now you can take away and act on it moving forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. B. This is very helpful to all of us as we progress through our career here as procurement professionals, or even transitioning to a different role. I want to ask the group, does anyone have any questions for Dr. B? Don't be shy.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Johanna.
Sorry, I was muted. I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Burrell, for the information that you provided. I think as professionals, we're constantly looking to improve, especially in this area of our of in this area in general, right? But having these tools and having an understanding of self-awareness, I think that was key. I think sometimes we look to our leaders to mentor us, but sometimes the important part is self-recognizing and self-correcting. So I really appreciate that, and I thank you for your time for today.
Sure. I mean, anything to help, because a lot of times we're looking to go in certain directions and do certain things, and we're expecting our boss to help us. But one of the things I learned in the federal government is your boss might not be a great coach. And a lot of times, you know, some of the leadership development programs that we have in government don't always develop people as leaders. And so I shared my LinkedIn in the chat for anyone that wants to connect with me. So I just share like a couple of things. Like I said, you know, for those of you all that are thinking of advancing other places, you know, I'm an advocate. Claremont Lincoln, the Lincoln Land Institute has master's degrees, but they also have a certificate right now in public management that's out there that's 9 credit hours. But their master's programs right now, as I said before, is less than $10,000. And Most of them are online. They use Canvas. They're cohort based. So for those of you all that are thinking of transition, to me, that's a thing that's well spent. I always challenge people to say, you know, we buy beautiful cars and luxury things, but I've never had anyone knock on my door and say, I need to repossess that degree on your wall, right? These are things that it will allow you to expand what you're able to do, be flexible with what you're able to do. You know, one of the things, even now with a master's degree, there are opportunities to teach at community colleges and teach online. And I always tell people my online teaching money that I made actually funded my kid to go to college. So my end of my year in the federal government, my last several years in the federal government, I made on average anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000 a year teaching online with various schools while I worked my government job. Now, I wasn't working during the day. Obviously, it's a no-no, but at evenings, you know, it was asynchronous. The online classes, you don't have to meet face-to-face. You're doing things on Zoom. And it was a direct result because I had the practical experience and I had the advanced degree along with it. And some of you all are working in areas where you have critical expertise and knowledge, where you're a lot better in the classroom to students than someone who just went to Stanford and Berkeley and never worked in government, right? You bring the real world that can say, okay, the book says this, but let me tell you what happened when I worked here, you know, at this role as a city manager.
Thank you, Dr. B. Cliff, do you have a question?
Oh, so yeah, I was kind of going back and forth because, you know, I mean, everybody here just went through procurement month, right? And I would have loved to have heard more about kind of developing that elevator speech, because I got up in front of the board and the first thing was like, oh my gosh, what does procurement do? You know, and I went through the list and it was, I don't know, a little bit specific for the procurement crowd. So it's hard to, I think, tell your elevator speech to people who don't know procurement. And I mean, and even our city council here, like, they're members of the public who became leaders, right? So they didn't necessarily come up through government. So like a little bit of help developing like a government centric or like government leadership centric elevator speech would have been amazing. So, but I did appreciate everything you did.
So here's what I would say about that is I think you got to connect the dots of what that means to them, right? You know what you do day to day, but what happens, you got to tell them what happens if we don't have procurement in place. Or what does procurement ensure that's going to happen, right? So I think if you connect the dots with them, even though they don't know what you do, you can tell what you do, but you can explain how and why it matters and what happens if we don't have effective people functioning in that role. I think that's where you present your value to people, because people might not know what you do, right? I might not know what an anesthesiologist is, but if Dr. MD tells me I'm the person that makes sure you don't feel it when he takes that scalpel out and cuts your skin, I'm like, oh, now I understand how important you are, right? So I know what you do now in a way that I don't have to be an anesthesiologist to know. I've had it explained to me in a way that's relevant, that matters to me.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'll work on that.
So I just wanted to respect everyone's time. I practice a lot to make sure that we stay, because I know you all are working and doing other things. And I appreciate you coming because I know it's your lunchtime or your other time related to that. My hope is that it was very beneficial. I put my LinkedIn in the chat for anyone that wants to connect and stay in touch with me. You know, I just want to support this organization because when Maria came to me and talked to me about it, as much as everyone's saying thank you to me, you should say thank you to her, because she's the reason why I'm here. And then she brought me to Andrew, and Andrew and the other team talked to me, and I had a vision and explained to them what ideas I had and how I felt I could contribute. And at the end, as a final point, I just want to thank you all for the important work that you do. A lot of you do it without applause. It's real important. It matters. I know we've been in a climate where people don't really value or appreciate and respect government, but as someone whose parents both retired from government, whose wife works in government and someone who worked in government 8 years. I really appreciate and respect for what you do. And that's part of the reason why I came there along with Maria to do what it is that I did today. So I hope it was helpful and valuable information for you that you can use moving forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. B. It was very, very valuable for all of us. And I can see that a lot of people are very thankful with the presentation and would like to know if you will be able to share your PowerPoint slides with us, if that's okay.
Sure.
You can send it to us by email if you want, and then we'll distribute it to the group.
Okay.
If that's possible. But
Sure,
we
I'll
are
do that.
so thankful, so honored, and really very, very privileged that you shared your wisdom and knowledge with us as far as leadership goes, and also whatever trajectory we plan to do, whatever trajectory we plan to go to in the future.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you all. It was an honor. And I look forward to maybe collaborating with you all again in the future.
We would love that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. B.
Thank you, Dr. B.
All right.